I have the most special conversation for you all today, and it is not often that I get to bring one of my dear friends on the show, and it feels so funny and weird to bring your friend on to interview them. It's so funny. But Cathy Heller, I love you. I'm so happy you're here. Thanks for coming back on the show again.
I love you. I feel like if I made an imaginary friend, I'd make them just like you. I feel like a lot of things in life are like too good to be true. And then once in a while, God's like, no, this is true. This person is like this caring, this positive, this real. And how I feel about you.
That is how I feel about you. And it is not often that you meet those super special humans and you just got to hold them super tight when you do. And that's how I feel like from the first moment that we met and connected, we like had that special bond. So I'm happy to have you back here. I miss you. Cathy actually is the person that I talked to when I was first thinking about making the move to Florida. And she's like, get down here.
Yeah.
She introduced me to our realtor that we ended up buying our house from. And, now you're out there in LA and just killing it and thriving. And the girls are just crushing it and loving it. And so happy for you. But you've come on the show before, but I don't think people truly understand like the enormity. Like we have these little conversations that are like a tiny sliver of what you're up to and what you're doing in the world and stuff like that. But we didn't really get to talk about the whole backstory of the abundance that you truly created in your life long before you became a business owner, how you took your God-given talent, that beautiful voice that you have, and you were able to make a career in something that is like literally one in a million, more than one in a million, doing that. And then on your own terms, you decided when it was time to pivot and make a change. I would love for you to share a little bit of that story. And by the way, for everyone that's here today, we're going to talk all about Cathy's new book that's coming out this fall. I don't even need to start the interview. I just need to tell you guys, you need to go pre-order this right now. We will put all the links. It's cathyheller.com. What is the link people can go to? Like,
Happy
don't even
about
listen to the rest of the interview. Just start typing it in now because you need this in your life. You need Cathy in your life.
I
That is
love
how I felt from the moment that I met you, Cathy. I was like, where have you been? There are not many humans on the planet like this woman. What do they go to get the book?
It's cathyheller.com/book. And it's like backslash book and Cathy's with a C.
This book about abundance and living your best life, this started for you so early, and you've done this in every area of your life. It's like everything that you touch turns to gold, I think, because of what's in your heart. But let's take everybody back to the beginning of your abundance story and how this all began for you, and then share a little bit of what this looks like.
First of all, that was like getting a rain shower of love. So thank you so much for the confetti hearts. I fully received them. I started where a lot of people begin, and it's kind of like the Dorothy following the yellow brick road. It's available to all of us, which is really so cool that the world is set up that way. And where it all begins for me is I was really searching for purpose and meaning. I had a childhood that was pretty standard, unfortunately, growing up in the 80s and 90s with parents who were pretty unhappily married and eventually got divorced. And my mom struggled with her mental health and was really depressed. And I said to myself, so is this what it is? Like you go through school and you go through adolescence and you grow up to be a pretty meh emoji kind of adult. I was like, that doesn't feel worth it. I don't get it. And I was on a mission to find meaning. And one of my rabbis said to me something which I've quoted many times because I just love it. And he said, the opposite of depression is not as much happiness as it is purpose. Because, when you're in labor, let's say, which you and I both had that experience, you're in pain, but you're not suffering because the pain has purpose. So I don't know that life is the kind of journey that is pain-free, but I think that the highs and lows, when they have purpose to them, we feel it's all worth it.
Yeah.
And you're somebody who's like trained for your business the way an athlete trains for their sport. It's like there's purpose in that. Like that's gorgeous. Like we're actually really equipped to be with all the different turns that life throws us. We're actually really also equipped to find an endless amount of synchronicity and abundance in this world. This world is not net neutral. This world is actually net positive. The other day, I was opening the back of my SUV and something kind of fell out of the back, and it was this plate. It was a glass plate, and they picked it up, and my finger was cut. And we run inside, and my daughters are so cute. They're getting me like a Band-Aid and Neosporin. And I said to them, what's amazing is that right away, my hand is going to go into repair and it's going to start to heal itself. and you'll see, like, it knows
Yeah.
what to do.
Yeah.
And within like 3 days, it's like a little scar, and then now nothing. So we live in a world that's designed to create wholeness and beauty and repair and to move us towards friends like you and I connecting. It's like
Yeah.
you wind up realizing what I did, which is when I was in college, I started studying humanities, and I realized that I could get a degree studying meaning. And I said to my professor, what would it be? He's like, well, you could get a degree in like world religion and like study all the different ways that people have answered the question, why are we here? And I was
Yeah.
like, great, sign me up. So I studied all these beautiful philosophies and traditions. And then the summer after college, to sort of dig into that deeper, I went to Jerusalem for what I thought was 3 weeks. And I stayed in Jerusalem for 3 years. And I studied in the ancient text and sort of broke my teeth learning so much that how I say it is that I learned so much to realize how little I know. I learned enough to know how little there is that I have now grasped, because that's how much there is to know.
Yeah.
But what I did learn is that we are each a masterpiece. We're a piece of the master, and that our heart is capable of receiving an infinite amount. And the reason it's capable of receiving an infinite amount is because it's capable of giving an infinite amount. And that we live in a atomic world. We live in a world that's made of energy. And Einstein said that the world is not 3D, it's actually 10D, it's 10 dimensions. And most of what is vibrating all the time is love. When you go out into nature, you just feel this feeling of peace. There's love there. When we tune our hearts to that radio station, so to speak, we just bump into the miraculous all the time. And this light of God, which we're all connected to, this infinite that we all have within us, it then becomes a magnet for everything good. And what's amazing is when we're moving from the part of ourself that's really our self with a capital S, which is our soul, we're not in lack. There's nothing missing, because we realize we're connected to, my rabbi says, we're someone because we're some of the one.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, we are so tapped in and turned on to that we just want to give this loving light. And next thing you know, everything good happens for you. And so I did this incredible 3-year study and then moved to Los Angeles. And exactly what you said to me is what my friends would say: everything you touch turns to gold. And I was like, that's so fascinating, because this must be the true way to manifest, because there's no part of me that's coming from lack or a sense of, I need this to be whole. You know, we didn't come to the world for like piles of things or piles of achievement or more likes on Instagram. We came to feel this feeling of like connection to the divine well-being, true bliss, which is a state of being, which is what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your heart. There's no amount of things that you could stack up to trade for a feeling of like inner peace. And so when you actually have that, it's the most impressive thing. It impresses, literally, it imprints in the energy of everything around you. And then it's just amazing how you get so much opportunity, but you didn't even need necessarily, because you're so busy. So I came to LA and wanted to get a record deal. And what's kind of neat is that I did get the record deal. And I was actually at Interscope when Lady Gaga was recording Paparazzi. I was in the room. I was like, wow, she's probably going to make it. She's really talented. I was amazed actually how many string instruments are on that record. If you go back and listen, her producer, Ron Fair, was showing me on the board. He was like, watch how these light up. He goes, we brought 36 violins. And it's really kind of cool, actually, that they took pop music and put 36 violins on that record. It was pretty cool to watch that. So I'm having this moment. I'm like, all right, I've made it. Look, I made it. And few days later, I get dropped from the label, and I feel really sad, because from my lens, that was like what I was most meant to do, to use my gift. And I wanted to be like Amy Grant and Sarah Bareilles and all these people. And all of a sudden I was told that wasn't going to happen. And so I remember pulling over in the side of my car, on the side of the highway in my car, and I had just been told like they're going to drop you from the label. And I was like, oh my gosh. So all of a sudden, maybe I have to quote unquote get real. That's what my friends told me. You know, you got to get real. Been on this like kick of positivity for a while, but probably not going to happen. And, you know, you got to be an adult. You got to grow up. I was like, oh, here it comes, like the brainwashing that being an adult means being less fulfilled.
Yeah.
You know, so a friend of mine said, if you want to make money, you should do something in finance or real estate. So the next thing I know, I'm standing in line at the Cheesecake Factory, and this guy is standing next to me. And we start talking, and he says to me, "You have a great personality. I own $1.5 billion of real estate. I sell pieces of it. Why don't you come work for me?" I'm like, perfect. So I worked for him for 2 years until one day I'm looking at myself in the reflection of the elevator doors and I don't recognize myself. I'm wearing like a double-breasted suit. I haven't touched a guitar in 2 years. And I said, wait a minute, this is golden handcuffs. Like, I have all this in me that wants to be created, that wants to be shared. What am I doing here? So I believe that what we seek is seeking us. And if we can expand our capacity to see, we'll see more clues.
Yeah.
And so I said, God, I know there's a way for you to use my gifts. It's not Beyonce or bust. There's got to be a way. And sure enough, the next day, a friend of mine said, hey, Grey's Anatomy needs music for an episode. Do you have a song you could pitch? And I was like, I never thought about sending music to a TV show. I never even considered it. Next thing I knew, I was like, wait, this is it. This is the clue. I don't need a record label to do that. So I quit my job and I wound up getting really good at figuring out what stories were being told on which shows and writing music for 10 years for Switched at Birth and Pretty Little Liars and Grey's Anatomy and Target commercials and McDonald's commercials. And I made a few $100,000 a year for a while writing music and having my kids. And then somebody said, why don't you start a podcast? And I thought, okay. And so at 37, I started a podcast called Don't Keep Your Day Job. That's what it was called at the time. We rebranded it 5 years later, but it was called Don't Keep Your Day Job. And it was all about how you've been assigned and you don't need to put your dreams on the shelf. That if God gave you a gift, you're meant to give it away. That's what gifts are for, to be given. And that there's no way he would give you that gift and not give you the means to fulfill it. And I told my story and I helped so many people start writing scripts and baking and dancing and selling their art and creating their yoga studios and whatever it was just and the podcast took off. And sure enough, that became really interesting because I came to LA initially thinking I was supposed to use my voice. And I believe that what happens is if you let go and you just say, God, how can I serve? It'll be supersized. Where I thought I was supposed to sing music that I wrote. And I look back and I'm like, no, now I get to use my voice to help other people find their voice.
Yeah.
So the podcast took off and we hit 50 million downloads and I wrote a couple books. And then 5 years in, this is the end of the story. 5 years in, I had so many deep conversations with people like you and Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra, so many rabbis, so many spiritual thinkers, John Kabat-Zinn, talking about mindfulness, talking about meditation, talking about God, talking about the universe. And I was like, you know what? There's so much abundance at our fingertips. I think we're going to rebrand it. And so we rebranded the show to be called Abundant Ever After, which is really what we are because we're those abundant souls. And so we've been talking about what is the true way to manifest abundance in your life. And that's a little bit of the journey.
You're just a profound human being. I can't really even just encapsulate what you just shared there, but I would say for everyone listening, like go back to the beginning of the episode and just go listen to that 3 more times and you'll tap into a part of yourself that you probably have never been able to before. You're such a special being, Cathy, and it's so clear to me. And it's so interesting because I think we've been so deeply connected by our faith journey and our beliefs, and we have different beliefs. You know, you're a very devout Jew. I am a devout Christian. We share so much crossover in our beliefs about what we use different words. I say vocation, right? You were just talking about gifts and like we're here. And I love to say that every day that we wake up because God chose for us to pursue giving those gifts away for another day. He gave us another day because he's indicating to us that you're invited to continue on the mission, continue on the journey. But I think so many times we want to tell God what the mission or the journey is instead of saying, yes, God. My answer is yes, right? And so you've gone through that journey of opening yourself up. And what would you say for people that are listening that maybe they're in that moment of they thought that they were pursuing their gift, they thought that they were attempting to use their gift, and now they feel like a big door has closed and they're trying to figure out, and obviously this is why they need to read the book, but just give them like a little bit of perspective on how to reframe and get into that spirit of everything that you just described. I would describe it as a Kairos moment where you open yourself up to God and you say, yes, my answer is yes, God. I'm not going to dictate to you, but I'm instead going to be open to your will for me. But what advice would you give everyone listening about that?
First of all, you're such a love. You're so loving that it's so fun to just receive you and be around And it's really what the world needs. So I'm so grateful that you're in the world. Every morning in the morning blessings, in Jewish tradition, we say a prayer called motivational, where we say, thank you, God, for returning my soul to my body to give me another day. And the end of that phrase is really interesting because the end of the prayer says, thank you for having faith in me. So it means that out of 8 billion people, God added you to the equation for a reason. Find out why.
Yeah.
So, I'll tell you a quick story. My dad passed away July 3rd. And a few weeks after that, my husband and I took our kids to go get sushi. And we were sitting in this little sushi restaurant. Some of the best sushi restaurants are really like those little hole in the walls. So we're in this tiny little crowded restaurant in LA where everybody has a line to get in.
Yeah.
And they seat a couple right next to us. And when I say right next to us, I mean it's like 4 inches away, right?
Yeah.
That's how tight tables are. So I could hear them. And it was so cute because they were on their first date and it was so obvious. So I said to my husband, I don't know why, but I feel compelled. I want to do something for them because I feel like I'm in the conversation.
Yeah. I love it. Of course you did.
We're way ahead in our meal, so we were about to leave. So I pick up the menu and literally go over to them. When I mean go over, I mean just turn.
Turn.
Right. They're right next to me. And I say to the girl, I'm like, are you guys on your first date? And she's like, yeah. And I said, you're so cute. I'm sitting right next to you. I just felt compelled. Here's the dessert menu. Please choose something. I'm going to put it on my bill because we're leaving. And then I want to get, she's like, that's so sweet. So I tell you this because she picks the fried ice cream or whatever, Japanese fried ice cream, tempura ice cream. I'm like, great choice. We just had it. So she goes, how do I connect with you? I want to, and I was like, oh, you can follow me on Instagram. I'll follow you back. So we leave, we take the girls to see Despicable Me, and we're leaving the movie and I see that she messaged me on Instagram. So I check my message and she's like, I just want you to know the dessert was delicious and thank you so much. And I said, great. I said, so is there going to be a second date? And she's like, I don't know, but he's really sweet. But I want you to know something, she said. I'm a widow. And she said, this is the first date I've been on in 4 years since my husband died. And that was the sign I needed, that you did that for me. You have no idea how much courage that gives me. And I said to her, wow, that feels so meaningful to me because my dad passed away a few weeks ago on July 3rd. And she said, my husband passed 4 years ago on July 3rd. Okay. So then I start to cry and I realized the thing I realized a zillion times. All you have to be is you for everything that's meant for you to show up. But what does it mean to be you? It means to not give up faith. It means to always know there's love right around you. It means to know you're needed everywhere. It means to know you're so powerful that you can look for opportunities that are right next to you, because there's no amount of good sushi that could match how good it felt to do that for someone and then to find out that backstory and then to find out that little Easter egg that was hidden there.
Yes.
The death day was this, let's just breathe in the fact. And I'll tell you another story. Sometimes we're just pushing so hard for a certain door to open and it's exhausting. But when you look back on your life, how many times are you focused on this door and then another door that you didn't even notice opens and you walk right through it? And you're like, well, why was that so easy? When I was starting my podcast, I went to Podcast Movement, which is a big conference. And when I got there was this really kind of networky kind of energy in the lobby. And it's not really my thing. Everyone's giving out business cards. I didn't bring any business cards. It's not I don't like that kind of thing. So I say to my friend, what is everybody really trying to get after in this room? She goes, well, everyone actually is trying to meet the people from Apple Podcasts, because if for some reason you were lucky enough to get featured on Apple Podcasts, since most people learn about podcasts through Apple, it would bring you a big audience. So I said to her, you know what? I think I'm going to come back after the networking party ends and I'll just go to the lectures. So I leave and I walk across sort of a long block to another hotel and I order an iced tea and I all of a sudden just feel more like myself. And I notice there's a man sitting next to me and he has the same sort of lanyard that I have from the conference. He looks at me and he goes, did you just come from that conference? And I said, yeah. He goes, it's so loud in there and it's not my jam. And I say, where are you from? And he says, the Midwest. I said, oh, my husband's from the Midwest. And I said, people from the Midwest have such good values. And we start talking about, he's just a really nice person. And he stands up 45 minutes later to leave. We talked for 45 minutes and he hands me his card. And he says, I'm the head of Apple Podcasts. I would love to meet with you. And then he says, we have an office in Culver City in Los Angeles. And he hands me the card with the address. And I say to him, this is the building that is unmarked, gorgeous building with valet that I've always wondered, what's that building? directly across the street from my kid's school every day.
Wow.
Every single day I'm there. I go, is that where it is? He goes, yep. I go, I know exactly where it is. I'm there every day. So I go and I wind up getting featured on Apple Podcasts like 8 times. I get nominated for a Webby. They fly me to New York to speak at the podcast upfronts. Why? Because instead of believing that I have to work so hard and the odds are against me, and it's about how hard I sit here and push, I know that God's got me. And I know that the best thing I can do is always just kind of walk around knowing that everything's working out.
Yeah.
And then I can let go and then I can walk right into it. So I say to people, you can either live from the place of probability, you can make some guesses about what's probable, or you can live from possibility. And from the divine's lens, why not just sign up for the miraculous all the time?
Yeah.
But to be there, we have to be on that wavelength, right?
Yeah.
My grandmother used to say, water seeks its own level. So what you seek is really sort of with you all the time because it's a radio station. It's like a frequency. So this is what I say to people. And I talk about this in the book. When you wake up in the morning, the same way that you select your clothes, you select your clothes and it's kind of a fun little moment. You're like, how do I want to dress today? And there's a part of you that knows that depending on whether you put on like yoga pants or you put on like a suit or you put on some like blouse, it's going to like evoke a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I say to them, the same way that you select your clothes, I want you to take 90 seconds and select how you want to feel today. And I want you to take 90 seconds and select, this is how I want to think and feel today. And it's amazing how most of the time we are asleep, our unconscious mind has the wheel.
Yeah.
It recycles fear and negativity that we don't even believe. I say to people, thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are fake news. And, my rabbi says that without the Joker, Batman isn't Batman. And we've each been given free will. And what we're doing is like, we're up against this voice in our head that's trying to pull us down. And that's actually a good thing because the victory is when you go, nope, not today.
Yeah.
Today, I select how I'm going to feel.
Yeah.
And then I want you to play a game with God and say, if I select this, I want you to show me that I'm headed in the right direction. And I promise the little winks you're going to get in spades are going to be so evident that you'll wake up the next morning, you'll do it again.
So powerful. This is, it's just so profound what you're sharing. Everybody listening, make sure you go get the book, cathyheller.com/book. Okay.
Yep.
Everybody order your book while you're listening here because you need this in your life. You see why I was instantly magnetized to this woman who is just like, you're such a world changer. You changed people's life just by them listening to this show. I already know that. I already know someone's whole life is going to be different because they listened to this one episode. I'm sure you'll get messages about it. I'm sure I will too. But I want to go back to something that you shared. I want to double back for a second because when you were in that room at the podcast movement and you had that instinctual feeling, this is not for me, but you had 2 choices in that moment to say, I'm in scarcity. And even though this is not for me, I'm going to stay and push myself to do it. And I'm going to be in this place and in this space that really isn't for me. Or I'm going to be in this abundance to be okay walking away and knowing that what is for me is going to arrive. It probably wasn't even on like a full conscious level. I think that's more of a subconscious that you were on the radio station that you're living on, which is the abundance that you talk about in the book and that you're teaching about. But you had the certainty and confidence and trust and faith, it's always faith, to walk away from a situation that it just wasn't for you. Like maybe it was for someone else, right? But because you had that belief and that certainty in what's for you will find you and it's always actually already with you, look at how that story unfolded. And I think that's really, really important, Cathy, because what you're talking about is the microcosm of how people's entire life unfolds. And this is why I think that faith is the centerpiece of absolutely everything when it comes to joy, peace, happiness, fulfillment, depth of peace. Because faith is going back to your identity in God, right? It's your identity that you're here for a specific reason. You were chosen for a mission. You woke up another day because there's something that you're meant to contribute here and that you can do it in your own way. And I see so many people, Cathy, on so many levels, in so many ways, that are stuck in this realm of living a life that is not even for them. because they don't have that faith life, that inner world that keeps magnetizing them to the abundance that exists all around us. It's everything that you're describing. But I think that was like, it was such a demonstration. And I feel like for you, it's so present that it's almost like it was subconscious that you were like, I'm going to walk away. This isn't for me. I'm out. And then it all worked out 100,000 times better than you ever could have imagined. And how many situations do we come across like that in life? But instead of walking out the door that wasn't for us, we keep banging and banging and banging and banging. And then we're wondering why we're frustrated and why we don't feel good about what we're doing or who we're being or who we're with or why, because we haven't just allowed the flow of abundance. And I hope that people will really, really get that out of reading the book.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that you deeply get it and have your own language for it and words and podcast, and like you're on your own mission to share it. Because I think what's so fascinating to me is, I'll host a retreat or I'll teach a workshop and I'll get people to sort of connect with their soul, right? That's really where I'm headed. As Wayne Dyer said, we don't get what we want, but we get what we are. So if you're a soul, you are abundant. You're connected to all that is, right? Okay. After we'll do a workshop or we'll have some kind of like meditation and prayer, people will feel really good. And I'll say to them this question: if you know that you could feel this good, why would you wait to feel that good? Why would you wait for something to happen to give you permission to feel that good? All that was happening in that room, which is what's happening in a lot of rooms, is that feeling of lack where you're feeling that what you need is outside of you. You need more validation. Yes. You need more success. Souls don't feel that way. Egos feel that way.
Yes.
And the more that I have cultivated this aspect of myself and memorized my way back to it, when you drifted, pilots don't have to do much other than takeoff and landing, which is super important. But during the flight, their whole job during the flight is just to watch the drift and bring it back. And that's our job. God's got the takeoff and the landing. Our job is to watch the drift. Yes. When you start to drift into, I need something outside of me to make me feel whole, it means you've drifted from your soul. When I was in Jerusalem, I asked my rabbi one day, I said to him, all right, I've been here for 6 months. What's the most spiritual thing I could do while I'm here? I mean, there's so much there, right? In Jerusalem. Yeah. He goes, I got it. I got it. You ready? He goes, okay. And we're in the old city, right? In King David's city. He goes, you're going to go out this door. I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're going to go down this little like alleyway. You're going to make a right turn. Then you're going to see a blue door. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to be on? He goes, knock on the door. And if you're lucky, a woman will answer. I'm like, yeah. He goes, she has 6 children and her husband died of cancer. I want you to offer to do her dishes. He goes, come back tomorrow. I'll tell you the most spiritual thing you could do. So we came here because we want to feel that power that we have, which is to love another person into life. My rabbi told me that there was a woman in his congregation and she said, you've convinced me I want to do something. He said, so do it, do anything. The next opportunity you see, take it. So then later that day, she's walking out of some building and she sees one of these like flyers with like a little advertisement for a charity. And it said, NODA, no one dies alone. Call this number. We need volunteers. So she said, I'm going to call. Calls a number. They put her with a patient. And it's a really special organization for people in hospitals who don't have family so that they don't die alone. And people volunteer to sit with them, strangers. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
She goes and sits with this man and she just can't believe how she just falls in love with this man. She goes every day for 2 weeks, feeding him ice chips, holding his hand. And he passes away and she calls her mother and she says, I'm so moved. I can't believe it. I don't even know this guy, but I volunteered. And the mother says, what's his name? And she's like, oh, I don't know why it would matter. Like what? She goes, what's his name? So she tells her mother the name of this man. And her mother says, he was the OBGYN that delivered you. He brought you in this world. You thanked him by helping him leave this world. I heard that story recently. I lost it. The word Kabbalah, by the way, we all know so little about so little. Like yoga, for instance, comes from Buddhism and it's mostly not going to the gym. Yoga is mostly a state of mind. It's like a philosophy. And then there's one aspect of yoga that has to do with like getting on the mat and doing like physical poses. But people think yoga is like one thing, which is stretching, down dog. It's part of it.
Yeah.
So in Judaism, Jesus was a Kabbalist. What we now know is like Kabbalah, that Madonna, it's like, I don't know what that is exactly. I haven't really explored it, but the point I'm going to make is like just very central to all of Jewish teaching. And the word Kabbalah means to receive. So what does that mean? It means that we are each put here to open our vessel to be a receiver. And what are we here to receive? The mind, the ego tells us what we're here to receive is more things, piles of things. I was just with my dad, as I mentioned, he was in hospice, and on his wall, the room he was in during hospice was in the office where he lived in his home. And on his wall was his like doctorate from Columbia and his degree from St. John's. And what he took with him had nothing to do with those achievements. He would have signed up to come to this world for the week of hospice simply to feel the power in being surrounded by the people he loved, knowing that they loved him back and that they knew that he fully loved them. That is his greatest accomplishment. That is all he tried to do his whole life until he got it right. And if you would have asked me in those moments in hospice, if I would go to the mall, because there's some shopping spree I won, it would seem so ridiculous because I had everything I needed to receive in them. The very first thing I learned in Jewish wisdom, I went to Jerusalem, as I said, for 3 weeks, and I was going to leave. That was my ticket was for 3 weeks. And I went to a class, and the rabbi said that the very first time that the word the Sabbath is used in the Torah is when Abraham is actually sitting at the foot of the tent in the heat of the day, and these 3 angels appear. And it uses the same word, that the same word for Shabbat, which is the Sabbath, is used there. And he says, and that's the first time we see that particular way it's used. He says, and why? Because the idea of the Sabbath is that when you sit and rest, the angels appear to you too. When you pause, when you get away from the mind telling you that everything's outside of you and you go inside, you get insight. And so that was a profound 3-year experience for me, because instead of looking outside from a place in my mind that tells me something's lacking on the inside and needs to be filled from the outside in, no, you go deep inside. You find the part of you that has that connection, and that connection is so whole. You don't want to be anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right. So that is a lot of what the book is about. And one last thing I'll say that's in the book that I think is just really cool technology, if we can call it that, there's technology like God's like, plant a seed in the dirt. It's amazing. It'll turn into a redwood tree. Like, that's a technology that seems to work consistently. Here's another one. Rabbi Aaron said to me, the world, if we take the word receiving and we go further, he says a radio is a receiver, it's a receiver. It's receiving music and frequency. He said, and so are we, right? So he said, if you put a radio on the desk where you are right now, this isn't hypothetical, this is literal. You could turn on the radio. Next thing you know, you'd hear music. And he said, where was the music before you turned it on? It was in the room, hidden in plain sight. But why didn't you hear it? You didn't turn on the receiver. So the whole idea, and I think this is what you and I have so much in common, is we know that turning that receiver on is opening your heart. And when you turn on the receiver, if you keep turning a radio, you get beyond the static and you get to the station that's super clear. For us as human beings, when you know you're on the right station, the one where there's no static, it's God's station. And the only song that's playing is a love song. And your job is to receive that love and give it away, and receive it and give it away. And when you do that, that is abundant, period. And then the amount of material stuff, that's the easy part, because God wants everything to thrive. Eagles should have as much food as they need. Trees should have as much rain. That's not the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part is all the people thinking that if they get all that stuff from the outside in, they'll finally feel full on the inside, and they never do. And then they keep needing more. That's a hell realm.
So you're basically helping people replace their whole operating system.
Right.
To be born again and to just recognize what's possible and already waiting for them to just simply tune into it. To simply tune into it.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say about that, because you mentioned it, it's like, why it's hard to simply tune in? Because sometimes human beings are not perfect, right? We know that. And our parents do our best. They don't always do it all perfectly. And sometimes what happens is we learn things the wrong way. And what I mean is, for example, love. Love is not earnable. By definition, love is grace. So part of it is people deep down don't feel worthy of receiving all the good. So they just keep striving, and they keep themselves in this default where they don't receive a ton because they almost feel like, who am I to have it? Because it has to be earned. I think about the day I had my first daughter and holding her in my arms. I mean, it would be ridiculous to think, oh, I know what I did to earn her hands. Oh, I know what it was that I earned this face, these eyes. There's nothing. It takes you to your knees because it's grace.
Yeah.
It's unearned.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be earned. That's what grace is. And so part of it is, if in your family growing up, your parents did the best they could, but you felt that love was earned. If you were thin, you got love. If you got straight A's, you got love. And if you didn't, it was taken away. That's not love. That's something else. And the more we can tune into what love really is, we notice, oh my gosh, there is a lot that's available. A stranger holding a door for me, giving me a smile, a friend that goes out of their way to drop me a text. And the more I can receive that, the more I can find my way back to the divine that wants to give me that all day, full tap, all the time. And so I think we have to make that adjustment. We don't realize that we're so loved. We don't have to earn that.
Yes. Ugh. You're a beautiful person, Cathy, and I just feel like we just need to play you on repeat. If there's anyone that's listening to the show today that doesn't already listen to Cathy's podcast, obviously after hearing this conversation, you know that you need this woman in your life, and she will uplift you and inspire you and help you open up your heart and open up your mind to everything that you already are, that you're meant to be, and that you can and will become, as long as you're able to tune into the right station. So I hope everybody listening grabs your copy of the book, cathyheller.com/book. We're going to put it in the show notes as well. This is going to completely transform you from the inside out, and especially someone that is so deeply connected to your faith. Cathy, you know I love and honor this about you so much, but it is what our world needs more than anything. Every day that goes by, we need people that are spiritually connected and that are sharing their faith, and sharing their faith boldly and proudly, and encouraging other people to also explore and rediscover theirs in a new way. And I love you for that so much, because I think it is the number one thing that our world is just craving and dying to rediscover. So thank you for putting that back on everybody's hearts and minds today.
I 100% agree so deeply. And we could do a whole other podcast about how critical that is, and how incredible it is that we live in this country that was founded on those principles. And what an awesome experiment America is, to found a country on Judeo-Christian principles that really give people such moral clarity. And look how far that's gone, and look how much that's done. And to lose sight of that, to forget to tell that story to our children.
I know. It's wild.
It is a real disservice. And you and I have that in common as well. They say soulmates are goalmates. I think your friends are people who share really similar values and look at the world the same way. And I think that's probably why when we first met, we had just met that second. So we hadn't yet had all those conversations. It was like within 8 minutes, we were like, oh, we're the same person. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I want to have you back to have that conversation. I was doing some studies with Madison yesterday, and we just went through the 10 Commandments together, and it was just amazing. And it's crazy how, as you said, that was the centerpiece. That was the centerpiece. And I think that there's a wild end and also a beginning that's happening right now. And we all get to be a part of it. And so let's leave a cliffhanger. We'll have you come back on the show, and we'll have that conversation, the beginning and the end of the world as we know it. And that will be the next show that we do together. But Cathy, I love you and I appreciate you. You are just an amazing friend and a great human and a great spiritual teacher, and someone that has moved and changed so many lives. And I'm so proud to have you as a friend, but also someone that shares in your love of God and just who you are striving to become, but also help other people to be. So thanks for being here. It was awesome having you on the show. I still think it's really funny to interview your friend like this. It's really weird.
It's really funny and weird. And we have the same conversations offline, but I want to just say again, even though you don't need me to say it, I just have to say it. It's just so pristine and magnificent to be in your company. It's like this effortlessness that you have to know what it means to be alive and be totally all in for the experience of showing up for your potential and mirroring all the good in the world and teaching it to your daughter and making all the decisions you need to make at all the moments of your life to keep prioritizing what matters. I really know like 5 people in the world like that. And I think the whole world is like basically being held up by a few very righteous people. So I so appreciate just how good you are. And I know that if God had a refrigerator, your picture would be on his fridge.
I love you. Back at you. And you know how deeply I feel that. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And guys, make sure you get the book. This is the kind of stuff that you'll get 3 pages in and you'll probably make a decision to do something radically different and also what you're called to actually be doing. So I'll just give everyone that gift as we wrap up today.
Thank
you
you.
so much, Cathy, for being here. Thank you,
Yes.
everybody, for tuning in. Grab your copy of the book, and Cathy will be back soon, and we're going to talk about the end of the world together. All right. Thanks, everybody.